Hello and welcome. My name is Shelley Hill. I am the current AmeriCorps Vista member serving at the Ohio Association of Food Banks. I will be presenting on phase two of the HER and SWAP implementation process. If you missed our first introductory webinar on HER and SWAP implementation, I encourage you to go back and watch that first webinar for more context to this process. And if you're joining us on this mini webinar, hopefully that means you're interested and ready to begin the ranking process of your inventory. So let's jump into it. You'll recognize this graphic from the first webinar where we introduced a phased-in strategy for HER and SWAP implementation. The first webinar covered a lot of phase one content with education on the HER guidelines and the SWAP model. This webinar is focused on phase two, where we will talk through ranking those easy rule of thumb items identified by the SWAP model and give some examples of what that approach could look like for your food bank. So we have two main objectives for phase two. The first objective is using the SWAP rules of thumb list. Understand how to rank those items into procurement and inventory systems. And the second objective is food banks can create a plan and begin work on ranking rule of thumb items by food category and or food procurement program. The Connecticut Food Shares Guide for Ranking Food with SWAP identifies food items or groups that can be ranked without using a nutrition facts label because the HER guidelines criteria table ranks these foods into a particular tier nearly 100% of the time. For instance, desserts are always ranked into the choose rarely tier according to the HER guidelines, and thus all desserts will always be ranked red by SWAP. Most forms of peanut butter will be ranked as choose sometimes or yellow, and all fresh produce will be ranked as choose often or green. And then there are several food groups that remain unranked based on the HER guidelines. So you'll see at the bottom of that graphic, we have condiments, cooking staples, baby food and baby formula, nutrient supplements, and protein powders that are all labeled as unranked. That all seems easy enough, but before that ranking process begins, it's important to create a plan for executing the ranking of those rule of thumb items. So, in order to create that plan, you first want to ensure that you have the right people and teams of people in on that conversation. This probably includes procurement staff, maybe IT staff, or whoever handles the majority of your inventory system. Maybe a few people from the warehouse staff need to be included. So once you have the appropriate individuals in the room, you can determine where you want to start with your ranking process. This could be starting with a food category, like ranking all of your brown and white rice items, which would be green and yellow, respectively. Or you could start with a ranking category and go through all your dessert items and rank them red. Another option is to start with a particular procurement program, like focusing on your TFAP items or your OFP items. Choose the what and then decide on a when. So set a deadline for when you want to have that particular group ranked within your system. Once you have this plan ready, then it's time to execute the plan. Whoever is actually executing the plan would have been decided in the first step, and then the rest of the team can support as needed. And lastly, repeat the cycle. Return to the first step and decide on the next group you want to rank within your inventory. Repeat these steps until you've ranked all of the rule of thumb items. I've included an example of what this might look like. So in step one, a food bank decides to start ranking all items in that unranked category over the course of 6 weeks. In step two, the food bank staff member or team executes that plan by bulk ranking all of those unranked items like the ketchup, mustard, mayo, the flour, sugar, and oil, the baby food and formula. They rank all of those items. And then in step three, The food bank confirms that they have completed step 2 and cycles back to step 1 and decides their next group to rank will be all the items in the green category that they procure through USDA. So this is just an example showing you the different ways you can approach this ranking process. You don't necessarily have to start with all the green items and then move to the yellow and then the red. If the way your inventory system is set up makes it easier to rank by the purchasing program, then take that approach. The plan will look different for each food bank, so determine what works best for you. It's a pretty simple process, but the success of this phase hinges on having a solid plan in place and especially setting deadlines for yourself. So that brings us to the end of our phase 2 mini webinar. This recording is taking place in May of 2025. So if you are watching this close to the recording time, please note that the full HER and SWAP implementation toolkit will be finalized in the next few weeks. It will have all the detailed information from this webinar, as well as information on all the other phases of the implementation process for your food bank to use as a resource. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, or if you're watching this after July of 2025, please reach out to Eliza Richardson. Thank you for joining and listening in on this webinar. We look forward to continuing to support you on your HER journey and hearing about your food bank success with this process. Have a great day.